You think electric cars are weird? Wait until you see what people were driving 70 years ago. I just found a car that only had one door. Not because they broke the other one, but because that's how they designed it. And that's not even close to the weirdest one. Back in the 1930s through 1950s, car designers went completely crazy. Maybe it was the lead in the gasoline, or maybe they just had too much money to spend. Either way, they created some of the strangest vehicles ever to hit the road. Let's start with number 7, the 1936 Stout Scarab. Picture a car that looks like a giant beetle had a baby with a luxury hotel lobby. During the Great Depression, when most people couldn't even afford bread, William Stout was building this weird mansion on wheels. Now, Stout wasn't your typical car designer. He built aeroplanes for a living. You know how some people can't stop talking about their job? Stout couldn't stop thinking about aeroplanes, even when designing cars. He looked at regular cars and thought, these need more aeroplane parts. The Scarab had its engine in the back, like a Volkswagen Beetle. But that's where the normal stuff ends. The inside looked like a fancy living room. The seats could move around and face each other. Remember, this was 1936. Most cars still had wooden frames, and this guy's building a rolling conference room. Here's how much it cost. $5,000. That's about $100,000 today. A new Ford back then? $500. You could buy 10 regular cars for the price of one Scarab. No wonder they only made 9 of them. Want to know where they are now? Only 5 survived. One's in a museum in Detroit, another's in a private collection in California, and the other 3, well, nobody's quite sure. But check this out. Stout basically invented the minivan, 50 years before Chrysler invented it. That's right. Your mom's soccer shuttle started as this weird luxury Beetle. The Scarab had a flat floor, removable seats, and enough room for a ping-pong tournament. Sound familiar? That's every minivan ever made. Moving on to number 6, the 1955 Aurora Safety Car. This thing looks like someone tried to design a car while scuba diving. And get this, it was designed by a Catholic priest. Father Alfred Giuliano wanted to build the safest car in the world. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Giuliano spent 3 years and $30,000 of his parish's money building it. That's like $300,000 today. The car had some wild safety features, a roll cage, side impact protection, and seat belts that would tighten in a crash. All great ideas that nobody had thought of yet. One problem though, none of it worked. The front end looked like a snowplow because Giuliano thought it would scoop up pedestrians instead of hitting them. His heart was in the right place, but his engineering wasn't. The car broke down on the way to its own press debut. Talk about divine intervention failing you. But here's the thing. Giuliano was right about almost everything. Crumple zones? Standard today? Collapsible steering column? Every car has one now. Side impact protection? Required by law. He just couldn't make any of it work in 1955. Number 5 brings us to the 1970 Ferrari 512S Modulo. Now, most Ferraris are beautiful cars. This one looks like it's ready to fight aliens. Imagine if someone took a UFO, squashed it flat, and put wheels on it. That's the Modulo. This car was so low to the ground that normal doors wouldn't work. So what did they do? Made the entire roof slide forward like a fighter jet cockpit. Just getting in and out was like performing a circus act. The seats were fixed to the floor. You couldn't move them. Hope you're exactly the right height to drive it. The wheels were half covered by the body, making it look like it was floating. And get this, they put 24 holes in the engine cover, arranged in 4 rows. Why? Pure drama. Ferrari's designers were like, what if we made it look like it could shoot laser beams? And everyone just nodded. Under all that crazy bodywork was a real race car engine. A 5.0-liter V12 making 550 horsepower. But here's the funny part. The car barely ran. It was built for auto shows, where it would just sit there looking weird. They finally got it working in 2019, 49 years after it was built. Number 4 is the 1948 Tasco. Ever seen a car with windows for its wheels? No? Well, now you have. The Tasco had little glass bubbles over its front wheels. The designer, Gordon Burrick, said it helped you see how close you were to the curb. Because, you know, looking out the actual windows was too mainstream. The name Tasco stands for the American Sports Car Company. But it wasn't very American. It looked like a spaceship. And it definitely wasn't sporty. It drove like a boat. Burrick had designed some beautiful cars before this. The classic Cord 810 and the Auburn Speedster. Maybe he got tired of making pretty cars and decided to go full weird. The car's only lasting contribution? T-tops. You know those removable roof panels on old Corvettes and Firebirds? The Tasco invented those. Burrick even got a patent for them. So next time you see a 1978 Trans Am, you can thank this weird wheel window car. Number 3. The 1946 Norman Timbs Special. This car looks like what would happen if you left a normal car out in the sun and it melted. Norman Timbs spent 2 years building it by hand. 2 years. That's longer than some companies spend developing entire new models today. The entire back end of the car was one giant clamshell that opened to reveal the engine. Because normal hood designs are for normal people, right? The body was made from aluminium, and the whole thing weighed less than 2,200 pounds. That's lighter than a modern Mini Cooper. Tim spent $10,000 building it in 1946. That's about $140,000 today. And what did he get for his money? A car that looks like it's perpetually melting in the California sun. But somehow, it works. It's like the automotive equivalent of Salvador Dali designing a hot rod. The car disappeared for decades until someone found it in a scrapyard in 2002. It was restored and sold at auction for $2.8 million. Not bad for something that started as a pile of aluminium sheets. Number 2, the 1938 Phantom Corsair. If Darth Vader needed a car in the 1930s, this would have been it. It was built by Rust Hines. Yes, of the Ketchup family. When you have condiment money, you can build whatever car you want. This thing was decades ahead of its time. No door handles. They opened with electric buttons. In 1938, the dashboard had more buttons than a military aircraft. It could seat 6 people, 4 in front, 2 in back. Because why not put 4 people up front? Normal rules didn't apply to the Phantom Corsair. It cost $24,000 to build in 1938. That's about $460,000 today. Heinz wanted to put it into production and sell it for $12,500 each. For comparison, a new Cadillac cost $2,000 back then. Sadly, Heinz died before production could start. The one and only Phantom Corsair now sits in a museum in Reno, Nevada, still looking like it came from the future. And finally, number 1, the 1951 Hoffman. This is it, folks. The king of weird cars. The car that makes all the others look normal. Remember that one-door thing I mentioned? This is it. Richard Hoffman decided that 2 doors were one too many. The driver's side had a door, but the passenger side, just a solid wall of metal. If you wanted to sit on the passenger side, you had to climb over the driver's seat. Hope you're flexible. The front wheels were so close together that the car would tip over during turns. Not might tip over, would tip over. The rear wheels were set normally apart, giving the car a shape best described as teardrop having an identity crisis. The windscreen was made of 5 separate pieces of flat glass. Why use one curved piece when you can use 5 straight ones? But here's the crazy part. It had a retractable hardtop that disappeared into the trunk in 1951. That's a feature that didn't become common until the 1990s. Only 3 Hoffmans were ever built. Surprisingly, 2 of them still exist. Unsurprisingly, nobody's tried to restore them. They're probably afraid the cars would tip over while sitting in the garage. So what can we learn from these crazy cars? First, sometimes the weirdest ideas lead to great innovations. The Scarab predicted minivans. The Aurora Safety Car predicted modern safety features. The Tasco gave us T-tops. And the Phantom Corsair showed us features we wouldn't see in regular cars for decades. Second, just because you can build something doesn't mean you should. Looking at you, one-door Hoffman. And finally, maybe we should be grateful that cars today are a bit boring. At least they have all their doors and don't tip over when you turn corners. Hit subscribe to see more automotive weirdness from the past.